Hi 10th graders, welcome to your very first video of Unit 1. Today we're going to be talking about social protest art, and that is because we are about to start reading the play A Raisin in the Sun. It was written by an author named Lorraine Hansberry in the 1950s, and this play is actually an example of social protest art. So today in this video we are going to get a definition for what social protest art means, and we're also going to look at some examples that you might have seen or heard of. The question we are talking about for this entire video is, what is social protest art? I want to give you some examples that you might be familiar with. The first is the book The Hate U Give. So this is a super popular book that came out a couple years ago. I've had a bunch of students read it and they've all loved it. It's also been turned into a movie. And this is a book about a Black teenage girl. Her friend is murdered by the police. And she actually ends up organizing a bunch of protests against police brutality and racism in her community. So this is definitely an example of social protest art. The second example is a much older book called Native Son by Richard Wright. This book came out a long time ago and is thought of one of the first examples of social protest art to be published. We have a bunch of books by Richard Wright in the Media Center, and he's a fantastic author that I would definitely recommend. The third example of social protest art is a documentary that's on Netflix, and it's called 13th. You might have heard about this one because it is about the prison system in the United States and how the prison system has a really unequal impact and effect on Black Americans, more so than other groups of people in the country. This is Kendrick Lamar. He's a rapper, an artist, a musician. And his songs are also examples of social protest art. So we're going to be talking a lot about how music and song lyrics can actually be examples of protest art. This is a picture of a poster or a sign that you might see at like a rally or a protest. And something like this is also an example of social protest art. Our last example is the movie Get Out, which is a thriller. You might have heard of it. So I want you to look at all of these things and think, what do they all have in common? What might the definition of social protest art be? So I'm about to give you the definition. I want you to write this down in your notes. The definition of social protest art is art that addresses and challenges cultural power structures. So write this down and also take a moment to think about, what do you think cultural power structures might mean? When I say cultural power structures, I mean things that give certain people a lot of power, but take power away from other people. So you can think about things like racism, sexism, or homophobia as examples. For example, with sexism, that would give men more power and take power away from women. So social protest art is art that says these kind of injustices are not okay, and all people deserve to be treated equally and have equal rights, and the art is trying to convey that message. Social protest art is sometimes produced by activists and social movements. So this is a great example. This is the Black Power Fist, and this is a sculpture that's in George Floyd Square in Minneapolis. It's not far from where I live in Minneapolis. And this sculpture was created during the 2020 uprising and came out of the Black Lives Matter movement. So let's talk about what some examples of social protest art are. Like I said, it can be signs, banners, posters, other printed materials that you might use in a protest or a rally. It can be art that changes the appearance of a traditional existing piece of art to make a comment about a social issue. So this is an example right here. It was a statue to a Confederate soldier, and activists actually changed it to be a mural of Breonna Taylor in order to make a comment about racism and police brutality. This can be art designed for a museum, but with a particular social issue in mind. It can also be song lyrics by artists who are commenting on problems in our society. And finally, social protest art can be books or poetry or plays by writers who are addressing problems in our society. So that's exactly why we are talking about social protest art right now, because the play that we're going to start reading, A Raisin in the Sun, addresses some issues in our society, such as poverty and financial inequality, as well as racism and sexism. So the play that we're going to read is an example of social protest art. There's also a couple examples of social protest art around our classroom. So bonus points if you can look around the room and point out some social protest art that we have in our classroom. Now that you're done with this video, make sure you have your notes in your packet, and then you can move on to the second video.